our phone.
Awesome.
Thank you, Erin, for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys for joining. 1 second, let me do that. Okay, cool. So yeah, thank you guys for joining. Really excited to talk through some basics, really just kind of one-on-one, if you've never really done anything beyond holding a phone up with your camera, this is a little bit more advanced than that. So yeah, let's just hop in. Let's see, how do I do this? Okay, cool. So I kind of break up the presentation into 3 different sections. So I'll ask for questions if anybody has questions at each one of these sections. So the first one is just for planning. So video making, it's a very creative thing, and there are a lot of mini decisions you're making all throughout the process. And so it's really important to spend some time ahead of time to really think about what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it, so that all those little decisions are taking you in the right direction. So if your camera's there, for me, I've got like video over top of these, so you might have to move it to see it. But so these are 3 kind of things that you should know way before going in and starting to film your videos. If any of you guys are already marketing people, you probably are thinking about this stuff every day and all the time, but really important to think about. So first, it would be to know your brand. So know the personality of your organization, the way that you normally talk. So a process that I did with one organization is to turn that into, if your organization was actually a person, like what would that person be like? What type of things do they do? What type of things do they always say? What are their demographics? What do they look like? And all those things. If you can get a really concrete vision of who your organization is, then it'll come across on your social media or on all your marketing that it's a very clear person or clear organization that people can get attached to. And then also, it's important to know your audience, know who you're actually trying to talk to. So more in general, just knowing if you already have social media, what your social media accounts look like who's already on, who's already following you, what type of content are they looking for. But then also for each individual video, you have to think about what that video is for. So are you looking to get funders, or are you looking to get volunteers, or anything in between? All that stuff is so important to think about ahead of time, because you could end up talking about completely different things depending on your audience. And then lastly, but maybe firstly, is to know your goals, to know why you're making a video in the first place. One, to know your goals just as an organization as a whole, but also knowing what is the goal for this video. It's really helpful to have, are we trying to get a lot of views with this video? Or are we trying to get people to go to a website? Are we trying to get them to donate money? All that stuff. It's important to know what your goals are, and also to make sure that you're not putting in way too much for what a video can do. Your video is not going to completely change your organization as a whole. So what's the actual goal that you have for making this video? And then, so I have this kind of list. I'm not going to go through all this stuff, but this is more as a way for you guys to be able to reference back to. But it's just a list of things to think about before going into a video shoot, just to make sure that you're set up for success. And so a couple things that I will pick out is, one, thinking about your background. Your background does actually play a big part in the way your video looks. It's a large part of the video, even if you have the person as a focus. So one kind of quick tip that I have for making your videos look a little more professional, a lot of people end up filming in front of just a white wall, or maybe in front of a brick wall, but one way you can make that a little bit more professional is just stepping a couple feet away from the wall instead of leaning right up against the wall. If you step a little bit farther away, the wall will be a little bit more out of focus and a little, you can't see all the little cracks and details in it, and will come off a little bit more professional. And then another thing I would note is thinking about lighting. One thing that's super tempting is to have to film people in front of windows, because you want to film what's pretty outside the windows. But filming in front of a window, a lot of times the person's really dark, the window, it's too bright to even see what's outside of it. And unless you have lights shining on the person themselves, it's really not worth it. It'd be better to just film in front of a blank wall and that you can actually see the person, rather than being all dark and having a pretty background. And then the third thing would be background noise. It's really easy to underestimate how loud background noise can be. Even just air conditioning, you don't really hear it when you're just living your life, because we just naturally tune it out as people. but in the video it could come off as a lot more loud. So if you can turn off your air conditioning, that's always great. Or just thinking about if there's birds chirping, all that stuff. It's okay if that stuff's in there, but make sure you make note of that and it's a conscious decision that you're willing to have that stuff in there. So these are just kind of 4 different types of videos that I end up making and seeing a lot that I think are really great kind of options and maybe a place to start for when you're thinking about what type of videos to make. So one option would be an introduction video. So those type of videos are usually on people's web pages. Maybe they got emails. They usually are a little bit on the longer side. So most of the videos that I make are for social media, and those should be around like a minute. But introduction videos, I usually can see them going to around 3 to 5 minutes long, just to really tell the full story. And usually when people are on your website, they're a little bit more invested in actually learning about you than they would be just scrolling on an Instagram feed. But introduction videos are a great way to just have a tool to be able to send to people if someone's asking about what your organization is, or if they're looking you up online. That can just be a really quick way and engaging way to tell your full story and kind of show who your personality is. The second option is also behind the scenes videos. These are really great, I think, because one, they don't have to be that curated. They can look kind of amateur, and I think people expect that with behind the scenes. I think if it's too curated, they kind of think it's not real. So you can just kind of whip out a camera whenever you're doing a cool event, or you have someone really interesting to talk to, and doing a behind the scenes type of video is really engaging. And also it kind of lets your followers feel like they really know what's going on in your organization, kind of not just like when you have big moments. And then third would be educational videos. So even if you don't feel really like an expert in your issue area, there's probably the big experts out there, but you probably know way more about your issue area than anybody just on the street. So teaching people about what you do, teaching about the issue area, why this is an issue and why it's important, but also maybe specifically why what it looks like in your specific neighborhood that you work in, or in Atlanta. That's really important and valuable information that you guys already have that you can just share with anybody. And it also positions you as like an expert and a place to go to if people want to know about your issue area. And then the fourth section would be stories of impact or success. So as you guys know, a lot of the issue areas that people are talking about with nonprofits, they can get really dark, or they're very serious things. And you don't want your social feeds to just start getting really depressing. And so showing stories of where you've won, or where someone's life has been changed, or just where there's making progress, it can be really powerful. And it's what people want to see, and it's easy to catch on to. It's also easier to hop onto the bandwagon if you feel like it's already moving. So if you feel like if you can show that there's momentum in your area, people might want to hop on and follow also. So that's the end of the first section of planning. Do we have any questions already? I don't know if Emily, are you on mute?
So sorry. Yeah, no, I don't see any questions so far.
Okay.
If anybody wants to
really
jump
early.
in and ask any. Yeah, but that's good framework to get us thinking about what the content of the video will look like. Taisha wants to know, how long should an educational and behind the scenes video be?
That's a great question. And I think I'll get a little bit more into it when I start talking about the social sites. I'd say it really depends on where it's going. If it's, like I said, if it's on your website, it can be a little longer than on social media, but even between the sites, it kind of changes for length. But it's a great question. And hopefully I'll be able to answer that in a little bit. Okay, but I'm just going to move on to creating unless there's something else.
No, okay. Sounds good. Let's keep moving.
Awesome. So now I'm going to kind of go through the process of how to actually film and shoot better video. This is specifically on shooting on a phone. So I'm going to go through kind of how to film an interview. There's lots of other things like filming B-roll, filming all this other stuff, but talking about specifically how to film an interview. So I made kind of like a little checklist for you guys. Obviously you can just film just using your camera and holding it in your hand, but if you are going to invest in anything, these are a couple of suggestions that I have for making your videos to kind of take it up a notch. One thing would be is a tripod. So everybody knows what a tripod is. It can really help your videos look a lot more professional, just that it's more stable, or especially if you're filming yourself, you're not, excuse me, you're not filming a selfie the whole time. So being able to put it on a tripod, you can step away from it, you can have it, you can center up your framing ahead of time, and then you don't have to worry about things going wonky throughout. But to attach your phone to a tripod, you'll need a phone adapter for the tripod. So the tripod itself, honestly, you can find one on Amazon for about $30, and then the phone adapter is about like $5. So it's not a huge investment. And so the phone adapter would be the thing in the bottom right, and that just screws onto your tripod, and then you can stick your phone in there, and then it'll hold it throughout your video. And then also, I would recommend investing a little bit into audio. I'll talk a little bit more about audio in the next slide, but one thing I do want to mention here is to just take note of your camera or your phone to see if it has a headphone jack. If it doesn't, you might have to get a special microphone adapter cord, or just a cord or a type of microphone that plugs directly into your type of phone. Like, I know there's a lot that plug directly into iPhones, but those tend to get a little more expensive, but not crazy, but just something you'd have to consider ahead of time. So these are the types of microphones. So audio is really important when it comes to video. There's a saying in the filmmaking world that people will forgive bad video, but they won't forgive bad audio. So if you're out of focus, it's too dark, all that stuff, they're going to be more likely to watch it than if there's just way too much background noise, or if you're just way too quiet for anybody to be able to understand it. So that's why I recommend maybe investing a little bit into doing some audio. But which type of microphone to do? So first you have handheld microphones. That's probably what you think of when you think of a microphone. And they can have some really good audio if you are holding it correctly. So the way that these type of microphones work is that there's kind of like an oval above the microphone of where it's collecting audio. So if you keep your mouth in that oval, then it's going to capture some pretty good audio. But the oval is right above it. So if you're pointing the microphone away from your mouth or any other direction, it's not going to capture as much audio, and definitely not as quality audio. But it's also a really good thing for just on the run, where you don't want to have to clip the mic to somebody. You just want to be able to hand them the mic, or if you're talking to two people, you can move the mic back and forth, rather than the next one where you're actually clipping it to the speaker's close. So yeah, the next one is called a lavalier mic or a lapel mic. These are like more professional. These are what I use a lot of the time. So these will clip to the person's shirt or to the lapel, and they're more professional one because you can clip it pretty close to the person's face and on their clothes, and so that'll allow you to get a little bit better audio. Also, it's smaller. Holding a handheld microphone doesn't look quite as nice as having just a little tiny microphone in the corner of the person's shirt, and also you don't have to worry about kind of user error. You don't have to worry about people moving the microphone around while they're talking. You know it's going to be consistent quality audio the whole time. And then the last option would be a boom mic or a shotgun mic. And so these type of microphones, I would recommend probably the least out of these options. They are also the cheapest, so you have to kind of balance that out. But the reason I recommend them the least is because usually you're attaching this to your actual phone, and just in general with audio, the closer you can get your microphone to the person's mouth, the better audio it's going to be. And so since you're attaching it to the phone, it's going to be a couple feet away, and just not capturing as good of audio. If you're in a pretty quiet place, it's usually not an issue, but if there's like any background noise, it's usually going to pick it up a little bit. But I will say that shotgun mics are better than nothing. So the way that shotgun mics work the reason they're called shotgun mics is because they capture audio all what's straight in front of it. So it's kind of like a beam of area where it's trying to collect audio from. So it's not going to collect it from the sides or behind it. It's only going to collect in front of it. Whereas your phone's collecting just anywhere around it. So it's better than a phone, but not the best of these three options. Cool. Okay, next talking about composition. So this is something really easy that you can make your videos look a lot better. It's just to take a couple of seconds to really look at how you're framing your videos. So the first thing I would talk about is rule of thirds. So some of you guys may have heard of this before. So rule of thirds is just when you break up your frame into rows, horizontal rows and vertical rows by 3 groups. So you get these 4 lines. And so what you're trying to do is to align your focus or your subject along these lines. So my general rule of thumb when I'm filming a person is to have their right or their outside eye along one of the top crosshairs. So you can see in this one, I have her eye on the top right crosshair. And that just makes the shot look very balanced and like adds more visual interest than just having center of the screen. And then another thing I would talk about that kind of goes hand in hand with this is headroom. So I think that's like one of the most telltale signs if someone's not as practiced with video is when they do a weird amount of headroom. So either they cut the person's top of their head off, or they give way too much headroom and the person's head is either in the lower part of the video or in the center or the lower part. So if you're following the rule of thirds, you are probably good in that front, but thought it was worth kind of bringing out to just take note of how much room you've got above the person's head. And then the last thing I talk about is eye line. So just in general, unless you're doing something more creative like a documentary or something like that, you probably always want to keep eye level with the person you're interviewing. So if they're sitting down, standing up, just adjust your tripod or your hands to make sure that you're even with the person. And the last thing I wanted to say on this slide was just, I put this other picture in here of Gigi who's in the polka dots to show that you can center a person on the screen. You don't have to always do the right or the left for the rule of thirds. My general rule, which is just kind of my personal preference, is to put them on the sides on like angles if the background's more interesting and I want to kind of highlight the background a little bit. But if it's just a white background, I'll usually center them just to kind of keep the focus on them. So this is also a slide that I kind of made more as a reference for you guys to be able to come back to, so you don't have to work on all your settings right now. But these are 3 kind of suggestions that I have that you can actually do on your phone that will make your videos maybe a little bit better. So the first thing would be to turn on your grid. So that's actually turning on the rule of thirds. So you'll actually get that rule of thirds on your camera while you're filming, which is helpful while you're setting it up. The second thing is kind of more of a personal thing. I think it makes it look a little better, is to change your frame rate. So most of the time when you're filming it usually in 24 to 30 frames per second. But increasing the frames per second will kind of give your shot a little bit more of a smoother, cleaner look. There's literally just more frames in every second of the video, so it just makes it a little less jumpy, a little smoother. I think it looks a little bit more professional. But one thing to note with this is if you're always running out of phone space or you're running close, it does take up more space on your phone because you're holding more frames. So if you're getting close, maybe don't do this. And then my last suggestion would be to turn on the autofocus and auto exposure hold. So both of those things, your phone is throughout the time you're filming or just at any moment, it's trying to adjust to what it thinks you want it to be. So if it's brighter outside, it's going to turn down the brightness. If it's too dark, it's going to turn up the brightness. And it's going to change the focus based on what it thinks your focus is. And so sometimes if you get it all set up how you want it to go, it'll kind of adjust and think that, oh, you want it to be focused on this person behind you, and move the focus away from the actual subject. So I think a safe thing to do is be able to turn on the autofocus and auto exposure hold once you've got it to the point that you like it. And then it'll keep it throughout the whole video and you don't have to worry about it changing throughout. And then, okay, cool. So now that you have filmed your video and you need to take it somewhere, I wanted to give you guys some options for editing softwares. And so first I wanted to give you some free options for you if you're just starting out with editing. So if you're on a Mac, there's iMovie. iMovie I think is a really great editing software and will probably do anything that you would need it to do. It's got all the basics, even some of the more complicated stuff. So that's a great one. And then PC, they used to have Windows Movie Maker, but they don't put it on Windows anymore. And so I found they also have this program called Lightworks, and Lightworks is a lot like iMovie, that it's pretty much anything you will need to do. It's got all the clipping and all that stuff. It looks pretty professional. So those are 2 free options that I think would probably cover anything. If you're just doing a basic interview, it definitely would cover that. But I did want to just kind of throw out the industry standards, the most common editing software, in case you wanted to take it up a notch. So first there's the Adobe Creative Suite, and so their video editing software is Premiere, which is the PR there. That's what I use. Premiere is really great in being able to get down to the nitty-gritty of if you want to transition to change just a little bit this way and get really exact with it. Premiere works really great in that. And I see most people using Premiere, most other videographers. Another option is Final Cut. Final Cut used to be like the main editing software, but has kind of gotten off since then. But it's a really great one if you're thinking about stepping into professional editing softwares, just because it's a little bit more user-friendly. There's a little bit more prepackaged stuff. And then lastly, there's Avid, which they actually make like feature films on a decent amount of time. But it's surprisingly not as expensive as you would think for a really nice editing software. So that is the end of the creating section. Do we have any other questions now?
Sure. Have you ever worked with Movavi, M-O-V-A-V-I video editor? And if so, how would you sort of rank it within the ones you mentioned?
That's a good question. I don't think, that kind of sounds a little familiar, but I've never worked with it. The one thing I'd say watching out for with editing softwares, though the really cheap ones, is that some of them put a watermark on the video. So like you can make the video for free, but it'll have to have the little watermark of the editing software on there. So the two that I suggested don't have that, but if Movavi doesn't have that, then it's probably just as good.
Fair enough. So then Premiere, I know some of these softwares probably require a subscription. Maybe they have a free version that's limited and then a paid version. Premiere has a subscription, correct?
Yes. So Premiere it's $60 a month. The regular subscription, if you or you know somebody who's in the educational world, there's a $20 charge for if you have like an educational account, so it's a little bit cheaper. But I think Final Cut is not subscription. I think you just can get it, or at least last time I checked. So if you don't want to do a subscription,
and I want to mention too, sure, I want to mention too, we at GCN often refer people to TechSoup, TechSoup. They do a lot of discounts with technology, specifically for nonprofits, if you can show your nonprofit status.
Oh, that's awesome.
How about shooting vertical versus horizontal?
Yes. So great question. I will be getting into that right here. But yes, that's a big question. But yes, okay, I'll answer that.
Excellent. And then I assume perhaps we're also going to touch on moving the video from your phone to a PC so that you can edit using a more robust software than you would find on your phone.
Yeah, I don't have a kind of step-by-step on that in this workshop, but you can definitely, I don't think it's a super hard process. I've done it a couple of times. If you have like an iPhone or you're going to a Mac, you can do AirDrop, and that's probably your easiest option. But with Androids and PCs, it can get a little bit more complicated. But if you use Google, how to do it from your software to your computer, I think it's not a super long process.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. Interviewing a person, should the person look at you or at the camera?
It's a great question, and honestly, I go back and forth about this sometimes. It kind of depends on the vibe that you're going for. I think when you're going straight to camera, that's great for, especially if you have anything that the person's like a planned thing that they're saying, they're not like answering it just a question. I think when you're looking off camera, it's a little bit more, a little more of a personal conversation. It seems like more of a, like, it's an actual conversation that the interviewer is having with the interviewee. But I think it's more of a personal preference. I see both ways, and I don't think either way is wrong.
Fair enough. All right, we've got a couple more technical questions. I'm going to save those for the end just to keep us moving. Awesome. And so let's talk about sharing.
Awesome. So now you have your beautiful video and you want to share it with the world and want to make sure the most amount of people get to see it that is possible. So first, I want to kind of just jump through the social platforms and talk about the preferences and like which ones you're considering. So if you aren't already on social media or on a couple of platforms, I would say try to limit the number of platforms that you're on. I would say 1, maybe 2 at a time, just as you start to grow. Because if you try to do all of them just half-heartedly, it's never as good as doing 1 or 2 really well. But here's kind of your options. So first there's Facebook, definitely the most popular, literally the most popular. And so I have Gen X, as in it is usually the older generation that's on Facebook, but really a lot of people are on Facebook. There's even some Gen Zs on there. So there are a lot of people that can watch your videos. On the flip side, there's also a lot of competition, because a lot of people are also trying to advertise and share their stuff on Facebook. So there's kind of a trade-off there. But with Facebook, as far as length of videos, they have a cutoff at 4 minutes, but I would say keep it nice and short at like around a minute. You can even go less. Don't feel bad about going less than that. It's way more risky to go longer, because anytime that someone's scrolling through their feed, they're deciding whether or not that your video is worth their time to watch it. And if you are only asking for 30 seconds of their time instead of 2 minutes, they're a lot more likely to be able to watch it. So just condensing your information as much as possible. And then moving on to Instagram. So Instagram has a stronger focus on visuals, so I love it for putting videos on that. They have a hard cutoff at 1 minute, so you actually can't upload a video for longer than a minute, except for Instagram, IGTV, and Instagram stories. I'll talk about Instagram stories in a second. But you have to keep it short, which isn't always the worst thing. It helps people condense it to the most important information. So, and also Instagram's a little bit more of a younger generation, so it's a little more the millennials and Gen Zs. So if that's who you're trying to reach out to, Instagram's a great option for that. Briefly, I wanted to touch on Instagram stories, partly because I think would be a really good resource for people. Instagram stories are a lot more casual, because they actually only last for a day unless you favorite them. So if you're just like posting them regularly, they're only going to last for a day. So they can usually be a little bit less curated. Those are a great section for doing behind the scenes type of videos. And so Instagram stories are one of the few situations where it's strongly recommended to do vertical. For Instagram stories and IGTV, it's designed to be vertical. You can upload square or rectangle, but you're going to get a lot of blank space if you do that. And then YouTube is obviously the video platform, and so it's going to be a pretty different type of video that you should upload to YouTube as opposed to like Facebook or Instagram. So YouTube actually recommends that you do your videos for 7 to 10 minutes. So these are going to be a little bit more deep dive. It's great for, like I say, for series or webinars when you're really like going in and educating someone on a topic. YouTube is a great spot for that. People are usually getting on YouTube a little more mentally ready to watch a longer video than they are on, for example, Facebook. And then also everyone's on YouTube. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't watch YouTube videos. So it's very multi-generational. Then we also have got Twitter. And so Twitter, I think, is one of the least, I'd say, friendly to doing videos, just because it's such a like text-based platform. But videos you can upload them, and they do work well in there. Everybody loves visuals, so on any platform, videos don't do bad. But Twitter has a hard cutoff at 2 minutes and 20 seconds. But like with Facebook, even though you can go to that length, I would still keep it around a minute. I have 1 to 2 minutes, but honestly, pushing it more towards a minute if possible. Just so that in general, the shorter the better on these type of sites. And so for Twitter, I have millennials. I think a lot of millennials are on Twitter, and then also there's Gen X and Gen Zs on there too. So it's a pretty wide range, but a little bit younger average age than Facebook. And then last, I wanted to cover LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is kind of a newcomer in the video world. For a while, they didn't actually allow you to upload videos, but now they do, and people are still kind of trying to figure out what the best practices are. I still think you should keep it fairly on the shorter side. These can go a little bit longer. That's why I have 90 seconds on there, but these are a great place to do your educational type of videos, because people are on there for professional development. They're on there to look and to learn about things, and they're a little bit more ready to get into a serious topic than maybe they would be if they're just casually going through Facebook. But you want to make sure that your videos on LinkedIn are a little bit more professional, because it's a more professional space. And the people on LinkedIn are the people who are out in the workforce right now. So Gen X is the millennials, and then Gen Zs are coming in a little bit. So that's all the platforms. And I just wanted to kind of cover some quick little things that can help you just improve your chances of moving up on people's feeds and to be shared with more people. So one thing is embedded versus native videos. So embedded videos are, for example, when you would upload a video to YouTube and then put that link onto Facebook. So you're embedding the link onto Facebook, whereas native videos is when you just upload the video directly to Facebook. So all of the social media sites, they want you to use their sites, and they don't want you to use anybody else's sites. So they definitely have a strong preference towards uploading your videos natively to their sites. For example, I have 2 Twitter things here. So on the top left one, that's a native video. And so you can see how already the video is really big. It starts playing automatically, which is people are going to watch it more likely. Whereas opposed to uploading a video embedded, it's smaller. People have to click on it to get it to start playing. And also just like naturally, I know for Facebook, the way that the algorithm works, it encourages videos that are natively posted onto their site as opposed to a link. So they'll push it up a little bit higher on people's feeds. But 2 situations where you might want to do, I would say, okay, in general, you probably want to do native all the time, unless one, you are trying to collect all of your views into one site. So if you have a Facebook and a Twitter and a YouTube, if you upload a video to all 3 of those, the views are going to be separated between all 3. But if you wanted to put it just on YouTube and then use the links out to Facebook and Twitter, then all your views are going to be on YouTube, and so then it'll be collected and you'll have more views, at least on that one site. And then I'm forgetting what the other thought I had. I might come back to it. Okay, so back to the question about shape. So I kind of focus on rectangle and square. I think the only time I ever do vertical videos is on Instagram stories and IGTV. I don't really cover IGTV because it's a little bit of a whole other topic, but we can talk about that later maybe. But anyway, rectangle versus square. So rectangle videos are, one, a little bit more professional looking. They look more like a classic video. And so they also don't involve extra editing and considerations while you're making it. So when you do a square video, you have to think about the fact that you're going to have to remove the 2 edges around the sides of it. So you have to think about that when you're filming. You also have to spend the time to edit it and make sure that it looks good in the square format. Whereas the rectangle, you're really just taking it as it is and uploading it as it is. But with the benefits of square videos are a little bit more fun and look more young. So if that's the vibe you're going for, then that's great. It also takes up more of the screen when you're looking through your feed. So when someone's like looking through their phone, if you have a square video, it'll actually take up just literally more of the screen, and they'll be a little bit more likely to watch it. And so in general, I would say if you're uploading to LinkedIn or YouTube, definitely go rectangle. If you're going on Instagram, more so on square, you don't have to do square, but square looks great on Instagram, and just the way that Instagram's designed, it's really for square videos. And then for Facebook and Instagram, or Facebook and Twitter, it's really kind of up to whatever you're going for and what vibe you're going for with your video. Just briefly, I wanted to say that live videos really do help your videos make it up the feed a lot faster. All of the streaming services want you to use live videos, and so they really do encourage it and benefit you when you do it. So it's a little bit scary sometimes to do live videos, but it's sometimes worth the risk so that you can get more viewers on your video. And there's a little bit more, I think viewers give a little bit more leeway when people make mistakes on live videos versus doing a edited video. And the last thing I wanted to talk about with this was captions. So as most of you guys probably have heard, a lot of people don't watch their videos with the sound on. Most people have the sound off, especially if they're in public, but even if they're by themselves, people usually just don't have their sound on. You usually have to give them a reason to turn their sound on. So captions are a great way to do that. And they also make sure that your video is watchable completely without sound. So I wanted to give you guys two options that are really cheap to be able to get some audio captioning on your videos. So one thing you can do is actually upload your video to YouTube, and even if you're not planning on posting it onto YouTube publicly, you can put it on private, and YouTube has an auto captioning feature that it sometimes takes a little bit and sometimes can be a little finicky, but it's the kind of the equivalent of Siri watching your video and then trying to transcribe it. So every once in a while, they definitely make some mistakes about what you're saying, but it gives you a way to go back through and edit it and make it clearer. And then from there, you can download the file, the captioning file, which is a SRT file, and then you can upload it to, for example, Facebook along with your video, and it'll caption your videos. The other option is to use rev.com. So I love rev.com. It's only $1.25 per minute for captioning, and it's an actual person that's watching the video and typing everything. So they're a lot more accurate. And then they also give you a file that you can download and add the captions. One thing I wanted to say with this was that, one, you can just upload the caption file to your social media site. There's definitely, it sometimes can get a little frustrating with naming conventions and all that stuff. It definitely works most of the time, but sometimes can get a little annoying. If you want to just kind of avoid all of that, you can just put the captions directly into your editing software and just put it over top of the video, and then have it kind of be a part of the video itself. And then you don't have to worry about the SRT file or anything like that when you're uploading it actually to the social sites. Okay, and then this is my last little part. I just wanted to validate you guys for trying to learn how to do video better, because video is awesome and it's taking over the internet. So in 2017, 74% of all the internet traffic was video. Then in 2019, it became 80%. And then now in 2021, I can't see the number, but 13% of all internet traffic will be live video, which is very awesome. And then 1/3 of the time people spend online is devoted to watching videos, which I know is definitely true of myself. And then lastly, if any of you guys do email marketing, just mentioning the word video into the subject line of your email increases the open rate by 19%. And then I also wanted to point out that putting video on landing pages can increase conversions by 80%, which is pretty big. And so that is all I've got. I also have all these resources over here if you want to go into more of these topics a little bit more deeply. And we'll answer questions in a second, but if you guys have any more questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out to me. I love talking about this stuff. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Erin. That you already have me thinking about things that we can do at GCN to up our game a little bit. We will, as we said at the beginning, I always like to remind people, the slide deck will be available and will be emailed out to everybody, including the replay. So we'll send you both pieces. You can also check replays or share it with people who weren't on the call if you want to share this within your networks using that URL there. Feel free to contact Erin directly with some follow-up questions, especially if they are specific or technical. Those are good to send straight to her, and we'll provide her contact info in the follow-up email. But if you also just have questions for GCN, you can shoot those to info@gcn.org. So let's see, we have a few questions coming in. This is an important one. How often should you post a video on social media, Erin?
That is a good question. And like most things, I would say it depends a little bit, but I would say that you probably don't want to do more than one video a day, definitely, but it kind of depends on what other content you're doing and which site you're doing. So I would say a good rate would be once a week. If you can do that, that's awesome. And I think that will create like an actual following and people would be able to keep in touch with you. But if you're doing more casual, just like behind the scenes type of videos and doing like, if you're doing Instagram stories, that you can definitely do every day and would be completely normal, if that makes sense.
You mentioned when talking about going live, doing live videos at Facebook Live or Insta Live, people are more forgiving of, things that happen, or when you mess up your text and speaking like I'm doing right now. but can you talk to us a little bit about still preparing to go live? I mean, what's the value of still sort of going through the motions as if you were going to pre-record?
Yeah, I mean, I usually, when I'm doing a live video, I go through the whole thing and do a practice run, because there's a lot of things that can go wrong that you just don't think about. Or it's nice also that the person who's answering the questions already knows kind of where they're going to start with the answer. And also, it's really easy, I think, when people are really excited about the topic, to go really long. So yeah, all those things, it's really good to practice. And to also, I would say, recommend having somebody who's off screen, who can be watching the time, who can be watching to see if there's any like technical problems that are happening, that can talk to you in the moment, to let you know if there's anything that's going wrong.
Absolutely. Okay, this one has some specs in it, so I'm going to read it carefully. So when you go to change settings in the FPS, you have the option to do 1080p HD at 60 FPS, or 400 MB with 4K at 60 FPS. What's the difference? When do you use either of those?
Yeah, I thought about going over 4K, but I'm glad you asked that. So the difference between like HD and 4K is really 4 times HD. So 4K is what people film when they're filming for like movies, when it's going to be blown up on an entire movie theater screen. And it's crazy that phones can actually film that now. So I would say with 4K, my opinion on that is that it's great if you are going to blow it up really big, but the only time I ever really film in 4K is when I'm editing, to zoom in and like change the cut. So sometimes when I know it's going to be only one shot, but I know I'm going to like cut the video up a little bit, and I want to be able to zoom in and out during the cuts, so it's not as sharp of a jump cut, I'll film 4K so that I can go wide and go in without losing any quality. But in general, I would say you probably just want to shoot HD, because 4K can take up a lot of space. It makes editing a little slower. It just slows down the entire process. So unless you really feel strongly about using 4K, it's not usually worth it.
That makes total sense.
Awesome.
So when looking at a webinar series, and this may be pivoting a little bit from our topic today, so that's okay if you don't necessarily have an answer. Webinars, when you're looking at something that's more than 10 minutes, that maybe you're going to be hosting on your website or on YouTube, as opposed to something quick and shareable on social, do you have a preferred platform for capturing that video?
Yeah, I don't have a preferred platform. I've definitely heard a couple, and I'm blanking on any of the names of them right now, but there are some that are specifically for doing webinars, and actually I'd recommend doing those more than doing it on YouTube. I'd say the best thing to do on YouTube is to do webinars, but the best place to do webinars is not YouTube. Because YouTube, there's just so much competition, whereas webinars are there's like websites that are specifically for webinars, but I'm sorry, I don't have any like actual specific recommendations for them yet.
And I think, so Kim asked this question, and we did a webinar, Tech Tools for Nonprofits, just I think a week ago, and I know we touched on this. We touched on a lot of things. It was an overview, kind of like you did here with shooting video. But at the end of that, if you want to fast forward, at the end of that, we specifically go into the video conferencing platform. So Zoom, Teams, GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, things like that. So that may be a good starting point, just to get your toe in the water and see what the different features are, and start to explore both the cost and the function of doing longer form webinars. But I think technology, in terms of your video technology, the stuff you've provided here is going to set them up to have really good quality video and audio, whatever platform they go with.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Do we have any other questions? I'm going to give everybody just a moment to enter those if you want. Again, we will provide this slide deck and the full video. And I know, Erin, you're going to be available and looking forward to maybe connecting with some people after this,
Yes.
and seeing if you can help them get even more video stuff up and running.
Yeah,
Let's see. Jake has a question. What is your preference for semi-pro cameras? And if you were to have a small budget to set up a newsroom, what would you focus on?
Yeah,
great question.
Great question. Yeah. So the two, I think, best semi-pro cameras that really aren't that expensive, especially if you get like not the latest model, but like the second to latest model. I actually use, it's a GH, well, there's the Lumix, and the most recent one is GH5, but they have it all the way back to like GH2. But I know like the GH3 is like $500 now, which really isn't that bad. It can shoot 4K, it can shoot a lot of things, and it's very quality, and with the light right lens and everything is really good. The other one that I see a lot is the Sony A7, and that's kind of like the big competitor for the GH5. So both of those are great, and they're both DSLR, so that means they're kind of small, which is nice for professional cameras, because some of the more bigger professional cameras can get really heavy and breakable. And then I think there was a second part to the question. Oh, the newsroom. So yeah, my first thought with the newsroom was getting a green screen, but honestly, I don't know if you need it. But maybe just make sure you get a background that looks good, even if it's just a white background or a backdrop, blackdrop, because that will add a lot of the professionalness of it. And yeah, and also I'd say if you're going to do that, maybe consider getting a lighting setup. You can get one of those that is really decent for also around like $500. And I think I might have some stuff on how to do lighting, and one of the links that I have in the slide right before this one, that's how to kind of set that up. Yeah.
Excellent. And I will mention too, so you can record directly on your phone. If you're going to get into something more technical, like using a green screen, then you maybe want to use your phone as your equipment, but use something like Zoom as perhaps your recording platform, because there are green screen options in Zoom that where you can change. You don't have to have a physical green screen. You can just tell it that, you know, your blank wall behind you is the color that you want to filter out, and it will then let you put a digital screen over. But just test it first, right? All of this, test it first.
Sure.
Before you do your live run, right?
Yes. And then, yeah, lastly, I just want to give a little plug that I have a couple of packages that are designed to help people who are making their own videos. So please just reach out to me if you have just personal questions about any part of the process, but also if you were like, I need a little bit of help, or I want to make this a little bit more professional, definitely reach out.
Absolutely. You've given us great tools to equip ourselves and our teams to go and do great stuff, but there are some things where the professional definitely input is needed.
Just save some time, yeah.
And we thank you for that. So thank you, Erin. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. Again, this will be made available, and we will get an email to you with all of that follow-up. So be well, stay well. Last thing I want to tell you is just on behalf of GCN, yes, a lot's happening right now, whether you are continuing to work from home or thinking about going back, pivoting your fundraising. It's a lot, and it's hard, and it's happening fast, and that's okay. We're with you. Erin's with you. GCN is with you. And so if there's anything we can do to support your organization beyond what's been provided today or what's on the site, please don't hesitate to reach out. You have our info. So stay well, everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.